Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and tall corporate leader from India and now currently in Dubai, coming for the second time in a row in a new avatar, talking to us from Dubai, Mr. Vishy Viswanand. Vishy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh, for having me back on your exciting podcast. Always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Vishy is the Senior Vice President of DAMAC Properties UAE. He was earlier the Deputy Managing Director of Max Life Insurance Company Limited. So, Vishy, since we spoke almost 4 or 5 years ago, tell me a little bit about your journey and what was your motivation to move from insurance to real estate?
Very interesting. Every morning I wake up, I ask myself the same question.
Okay.
Uh, but I think broadly, well, if I were to introduce myself, I'm basically a Malayali married to a Marwadi. My wife is a menopause coach, working with CXO leaders in their professional growth. We have one son. He's pursuing his MBA on the other side of the planet at University of Chicago Booth School of Business.
Mhm.
As a child, I've had a very stable childhood. Both my parents were government employees. First job, last job, same job for 38 years. I've had the same school, same home for 18 years. And then BITS Pilani happened. And of course, a bunch of lifelong friends also happened, my batchmates. At work, I began my career for the first 10 years in banking in a foreign bank. Thereafter, 23 years in a life insurance company from startup to scaling it up all the
Yep.
way. And now I've completed, actually today, my first 100 days in a new country, new sector, new company, real estate in Dubai and international markets.
Congratulations.
Why this shift
Mhm.
from life insurance to real estate? I think really two reasons. One was new learnings. I was, as they say, sometimes brain pug gaya with financial services, life insurance, a bit of banking. And I said, time for turning on a new leaf. And that's why I took a 6 month sabbatical, um, during which, besides getting a golf handicap, I also exercised all the thoughts of financial services. And
Mhm.
I said, I'm open for new learnings. And second was also going back to my career. I joined a foreign bank, but I was always posted in India. I
Mhm.
joined Max New York Life, but spent the rest next 23 years only in India. I
Mhm.
was always desirous of gaining some international cross-cultural experience, working
Mhm.
with stakeholders who are global, who
Mhm.
are of different nationalities, who are thinking differently, talking differently, need different motivations. And so these were the two big reasons. One is new learnings, and second is cross-cultural experience.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you. And since you spoke about BITS Pilani, I thought I must mention that my father and my brother are both BITS Pilani
Oh,
alumni.
wow. Wonderful.
But today's conversation, I thought I'm not going to speak about real estate or insurance, but I'm going to talk about you and all the values that you stand for. So my first segment is going to be transforming business by embedding a culture of customer obsession. And I've seen what you've done in Max, your Max Life Insurance. My first question in this segment is: what role does leadership play in fostering a culture of customer obsession?
That's something which is a subject which is very close to my heart.
Yeah.
Um, I would say it's perhaps the most important factor.
Mm,
Uh, this whole concept of customer experience is not the job of the customer services team in any company.
mm,
Many people know that. But how do you internalize it and how do you anchor it in the business strategy? Ideally, in the purpose of the company, reason for the company to exist. Unless it goes so deep in, I would see that it will remain flaky and superficial
mm,
because there will always be short-term priorities. There will always be pulls and pushes. There will be business numbers, boards, investors pulling you away from
mm,
this agenda. So it's very important to embed it very deep, as deep as you can. And that's the
mm,
job of the leader. Secondly, setting the tone at the top, what you will stand for, right? And what you'll fall for. So make sure you stand for customer. And that's very important to set the tone at the top, because everybody else is going to be observing what you do, what you don't do. And finally, make those hard choices. Because often I find this short-term profits versus long-term customer loyalty. It's a financial decision.
Hmm.
Second is putting customer experience and employee experience. Both are almost interlinked, actually.
Hmm.
Uh, Putting them in the forefront uh, versus hard numbers of top line, bottom line growth. So it's very
Hmm.
important to how do you have this, I would say, bifocal view of the softer aspects of the business, which are perhaps more important than the harder
Right,
numbers.
right. Well said, well said. And when I was reading about your profile and preparing for this conversation, I was fascinated to read about coffee with customers sessions that you believed in. And I wanted to ask you, talk a little bit about coffee with customer sessions and CXOs, and how did this influence customer relationships?
Well, I guess data, numbers, PowerPoint presentations, all of this appeals to the head.
Correct.
Meeting customers, having conversations over coffee appeals to the heart.
Hmm.
And as they say, real deep change happens only, जब तक दिल पे लगना चाहिए,
Hmm.
तब तक नहीं होएगा कुछ.
Correct.
So it is very important that when you see numbers, you'll see your top 10 complaint dispositions, you'll hear some, anecdotal complaints that hit you, and your rational brain will suddenly tell you that, no, no, it's okay, it's an aberration, let it go.
Hmm.
Let's focus on the here and now and things like that. But when you have a coffee with the customer, and when you have a conversation about their feelings,
Hmm.
then I find that the management's focus and orientation, that 20-minute coffee meeting is perhaps more valuable than 2 hours of hard data linked consultant driven presentations with a sitting in a boardroom.
Hmm.
And that's why it is, I feel, so important to have this coffee with customers, preferably at their location. I have observed that as well. If you invite them for coffee in your location, things change.
Hmm.
But go to their domain, understand their world, and then you'll find them open up and actually share with you the harsh reality of uh, of how they view your business.
Hmm.
And I think once the management team gets that, driving change, driving this cultural shift towards longer term customer aspects is easy,
Right.
much easier.
Yeah. Well said. The other aspect that you've been very big on is customer experience. And of course, I was reading some statistics which said that CX will probably be a $1 trillion opportunity in the world in the next 4 or 5 years. But my question is, how important is customer experience for the long term profitability of a business?
So, Ashutosh, it's quite intuitive that in most businesses, customer acquisition is expensive. It's a
Correct.
low margin by nature.
Hmm.
So, while repurchase is usually profitable,
Hmm.
so is getting referrals, word of mouth. And in the business that I have been, whether life insurance, banking, or even real estate,
Hmm.
retention is key to profitability.
Hmm.
So basically, retention, repurchase, and referrals, they are the holy trinity of the business of
Right.
profitability and long-term sustenance.
Hmm.
So everyone gets it. But I think our rational mind will want a number put to it. And when you put a number to it as what is the current state? What
Hmm.
are the benchmark states? What is this 1 trillion opportunity that people are talking about? How much of that can I leverage in my business? I think when we put some numbers to it, then customer experience is very intangible and touchy-feely, becomes a very hard, soft, board and investor-driven number.
Hmm. Well said. One more question in this segment, and that is that what advice would you give to leaders struggling to create a culture focused on customer centricity?
Well, I wouldn't call it advice, but I can only call it my own
Your
experience by,
lessons.
many,
Okay.
you learn by making mistakes.
Correct.
So I would say three things. First one is perhaps the sentence from Vedanta, which is Yatha Drishti Tata Shrishti.
Hmm.
Set the vision from the top. So that's the job of the CEO. That's the job of the management team. Demonstrate and demand customer obsession from the top
Hmm.
first.
Hmm.
Secondly, actually review the company's purpose. Why do we exist?
Hmm.
The company's policies. What are do's and don'ts,
Hmm.
right? and the processes. So the purpose, the policies, the processes that actually many more often than not inadvertently create friction for the customer. And then align the purpose and the profits to customer success.
Right.
If the company gets used to making short-term profits on the an anti-customer or a non-customer friendly way, that becomes toxic. And then it's a spiral downwards. So it's very important to align your profits to customer success, even though it might mean biting the bullet for the short term. And lastly, perhaps most importantly, what I discovered is make the invisible visible. Feelings. How do you measure feelings of the customer? Well, that's interesting. We have customer satisfaction scores. It becomes a hard number. You have net promoter scores, becomes a very hard number. You have benchmarks. So measure those feelings and make that invisible feelings into a factual number, which can be benchmarked and move the needle. By the way, even employee net promoter scores, that's equally important, because if we don't have happy employees, satisfied employees, motivated employees, they're not going to do the same with your
Right.
customer.
Right.
And secondly, align the rewards and penalties such that sales starts to think service. In the KPIs, you basically look at what is the weightage of driving incentives, rewards, and penalties in your organization for sales, for the sales team, and how much is it for retention, how much is it for referral, how much is it for repurchase. So sales to think service and vice versa. Service to think sales. So what is a cross-selling target? You cannot cross-sell unless you make the customer satisfied, right? So it's embedded. And I see that celebrating the frontline successes, deeply understanding their pain points, creating these coffee table books of service excellence, wow stories, so that it becomes very real and tangible. Put their photographs up, get them up on stage, do Gemba walks, go where the action is regularly. People should see you do it, and you should bring out value from it, from these visits. Live the life of the customer, live the life of the frontline. I guess once you start doing that, nothing can stop any company from creating an org culture of customer centricity.
Amazing. Let's now talk about your own leadership style and the way you have nurtured internal leadership. And you have quite a great reputation in so many young leaders who you have developed over the years. My first question, Vishy, is how do you identify and nurture high potential leaders within your own organization to ensure a strong leadership pipeline? And you said very rightly that for 23 years, you started from a startup to right to the very top in your earlier company.
Well, I would say two steps. And I'm trying to codify it, because all these years I realized that if you don't have a mantra, and if you find a mantra that works,
Yes.
then stick to it. So two things. One is actually start with creating a 2x2 matrix of performance and potential. And then box your leaders, okay? Potential leaders, performance and potential. How do you performance is simple to understand. You have KPIs, you have goals, you have your outcomes. Potential is which is the subjectivity is there. We try to reduce it by getting the collective voice of the management team on an individual's hardworking capacity, perseverance to adversity, values match with the company's values. So performance by potential, look at that top quadrant. They become your best bets. Once you identify them, which is the easier part, what do you do with them? How do you make it real? And I recall us having developed a talent scorecard. Again, making the invisible visible. So we said we have to move the needle and get these leaders from here to here. So what does this mean? What does exactly here and here mean? How do we measure this progress?
Right.
So we kept a scorecard. If I recall, we gave scores. First was to a handshake with the individual. Acknowledge and agree that you are talent, but you'll have to stretch and to go from here to here, right? So once that conversation is done, an email is exchanged, exactly what is to do, what are your opportunities for improvement, keeping your strengths in perspective. So 10% weight was given to that. And then prepare an individual development plan, co-create with the individual. What is to be done? When will you do it? How? Whose help? All of that. So that's 20% weightage given to that. Then another 20 given to inputs. Complete those inputs. Somebody will want to go for a ISB training program. Somebody will want mentorship, internal mentorship. Another person might be doing an action learning project. So that's your IDP. And as you do those inputs and the completion of that, certified by usually a talent team member or a MDP, management development program team leader, who will independently give you a completion percentage. Uh, then another 20% for intermediate outcomes, which is, have you gone for the course? Have you done that activity? The input, just the measure of success of each IDP task. And finally, about 25-30% weightage given to the collective voice of the EC, the executive committee of the team, on the final outcome score. Has indeed the needle moved or not? So when you do this, you embed this in the leaders, make this the responsibility of the leader,
Correct.
not the individuals being groomed. And the leader is being reviewed. Okay. So I found that this creating this 2x2 matrix and then this talent scorecard, a very tangible and repeatable way to identify and nurture hyper leaders.
Great response. And how can leaders ensure that leadership development aligns with both the business's strategic goals and personal growth and aspirations?
Oh, usually, I think if you begin with the OTR process, the organization and talent review process, you start with the most important business growth goals. Right?
Yeah.
What does the business want now? What does it want in the next 3 years? So when you start with that goal, then you have this 2x2 matrix and a high performers, right? The list of your hypos. And then you work on this talent scorecard and you IDP execute. So basically, it is these three things. The org talent review, which starts from business goals. Then you got your identified 2x2 hypos, and you work on their talent scorecard needle movement. And then you'll find that their IDP is getting ticked, the individual development plan is getting ticked. And as this gets, you go back into cycle for the next year to see, okay, what are the new organizational goals and demands that are required, and then do a virtuous cycle upwards. So OTR, talent scorecard, IDP. If you do this, you'll find that this business goal, personal goals are usually not in conflict. They are very much entwined, and the individuals, the hypos, get it.
Very interesting. My next question is that what have been some of the key challenges you have faced in developing sustainable leadership talent or a pipeline of sustainable leadership talent, and how did you overcome some of these?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I can tell you out of hard-earned experience. First objection you'll face is no time.
Okay.
Right?
Absolutely.
Everyone is so busy. The executive committee is busy. HODs are busy. Talent development is a very important aspect, but it's not my job. It's somebody else's job.
Absolutely.
So even the hypos say, I'm busy, right? So no time. Second objection is, the way I would look at it is, it's sharpening the saw time, right? Now, if someone says, I am so busy cutting wood, I don't have time to sharpen the saw. That's the kind of first objection you'll face.
Yeah.
The second is raising expectations unnecessarily, feeling that if I commit to an individual saying, okay, I'm having a handshake with you, you are an identified high potential, have I created expectations ahead of time? Is this now person am I going to be defensive when this person comes and asks me, so when is my next promotion? When are you going to move me?
Yeah.
So these are fears that a leader has. So how do you make it a win-win? Understanding that, see, even if they leave, even if the employee leaves, at least they will leave as a good brand ambassador of your company.
Correct.
Because they'll say that here is a company who's nurturing talent, right? And maybe you'll get a better employee through that referral, actually.
Correct.
So whether they stay or they refer, it's a win-win. And lastly, I think it's very difficult to stay at it, right? Perseverance, year on year. There will be quarter on quarter challenges. There'll be month ends. There is fear of commitment. So how do you be consistent? And I've seen that unless you as a champion do it for 3 years successively, consecutively, you will not find the entire management team with you.
Correct.
So I think consistency is the name of the game.
Correct. Great response. And what role does diversity and inclusion play when you are thinking of developing internal leadership talent?
Oh, that's again a very good question. It's an integral part of my present life. In my team, I have 35 nationalities. Okay. In the company overall, there are about 80 plus nationalities. In the customer base, when I last looked, it was over 130 nationalities. So, I mean, this is DEI, right? In real life.
Yes. Yeah.
So the rhythms, the cadence that worked for me, let's say in India,
Mm.
not likely to work here.
Mm.
The work rituals, the way of working, which worked for me, not likely to work here.
Mm.
Even the thinking will change. So I think this openness to inclusion,
Mm.
the openness to having equity, diversity,
Mm.
and bringing it at the right up to the thinking stage, the strategy table. Because unless you think like your customers,
Mm.
like your employees, how
Correct.
the hell will you be able to execute your business strategy?
Mm.
Right? I think the definition of doomsday for a board is when everyone in the board think alike and act alike.
Mm.
So how do you ensure that this doomsday doesn't happen?
Mm.
So essentially, it's all about uh, making it a business reason rather than a nice to have DEI subsection in your annual report.
Amazing. Time for one more question for you, Vishy, and this is for the thousands of people who will listen to our conversation, a lot of them very, very young. Given the incredible track record you've had, and as you said very rightly, with only three organizations, the banker in insurance and now real estate, what would you say are three lessons from your own journey that you want a lot of our viewers and listeners to take away?
Okay, the first one I would say the first big lesson that I have learned is the biggest risk is not taking any risk.
Hmm.
So, someone told me when I was very young in the life insurance sector, and this is
Hmm.
a quote from a lifelong MDRT 50 years ago, Ben
Hmm.
Feldman said,
Hmm.
dream big dreams. They have a funny way of coming true.
Amazing. Yeah.
So, dream big dreams and take those risks.
Hmm.
Not taking that risk could be the biggest risk.
Correct.
Number one.
Hmm.
Number two is, I think, inspect what you expect.
Hmm.
That's another terminology I learned and practiced, and it's withstood the test of time from a New York Life days.
Hmm.
So, what do you mean by inspect what you expect? Robin Sharma says this beautifully: obsessive attention to detail. He calls it
Hmm.
OAT,
Hmm.
right? So get to that. As complexity is increased, as technology has come in, as AI is starting a new wave,
Hmm.
it means you don't go higher, actually you go deeper.
Hmm.
So you have
Correct.
to be more your attention to detail quotient has to be of a different order altogether.
Hmm.
Second, again, when you're inspecting what you expect, measure the invisible and make
Hmm.
it visible,
Hmm.
especially the softer elements of customer experience, employee experience.
Yeah.
And thirdly, again, a lesson I learned, and I had to actually change myself, undergo 2.5 years of coaching,
Hmm.
uh, which is people don't care how much you know
Hmm.
until they know how much you care. So,
Hmm.
how do you authentically, deeply care about people?
Hmm.
The humdrum of the business and targets and tasks to be done. So, I
Hmm.
guess these three aspects take risks, uh, inspect what you expect, and third is deeply
Yeah,
care for people.
very interesting. And on that note, Vishy, and you threw amazing lessons. Uh, your biggest risk is not taking a risk. Second, you said is inspect what you expect. Third, you also said make sure you care about people. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for speaking to me about the transition to real estate and now in Dubai. Thank you also for speaking to me at such length about customer obsession and developing internal leadership talent. I think, given the amount of discussions we had on culture and leadership, we will certainly watch out for how DAMAC will go through a significant change under your leadership, specifically in these two areas, and I'm sure much, much more. All the very best to you and good luck in the new role, and congratulations on 100 days today.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.